Welcome to the College of Arts and Sciences online information session for the social sciences, hosted by Professor Lee Thompson and Professor Joseph White. My name is Michael Mason from the Office of Undergraduate Studies, and I'll be taking your questions via email to be answered live on air. If you have a question, please send it to summerreghelp@case.edu with the subject line Info Session. If we do not answer your question live, we'll follow up with you via email shortly. Students should feel free to begin sending in questions now or at any point during our broadcast. Now to your hosts, Professor White and Professor Thompson.
Professor Thompson.
Good evening, Dr. White.
It's such a pleasure to see you again.
I'm so glad you could all join us tonight. I'm Lee Thompson. I'm a professor of psychological sciences and chair of the department. And this is?
I'm Joe White. I'm a professor of political science and chair of that department.
I'm really looking forward to welcome you all to our campus in August. But until then, I know you all want to know how to go about creating your schedule so that you can register for classes this fall. So tonight, we're going to help you to create your schedule and try to answer any questions that you might have. You're going to be creating a very unique program that is going to be all of your own for your time here at Case Western Reserve University, and this fall semester will be the beginning of that. So tonight we're going to talk about the 8 different social science departments, and if you're interested in the social sciences, it's good to know that you have quite a bit of freedom to choose and try on courses in the beginning. The majors are not quite as regimented as some of the other majors, and so we want to encourage you to explore a little bit and figure out exactly what it is you enjoy about the social sciences. And most of all, don't be afraid to ask questions. You're going to have lots of people that are ready to help you. People including the department reps that are listed on the slide that lists all the different departments, and as well as the staff in the Office of Undergraduate Studies, and also your first year advisor who you'll be meeting in August. So we're going to begin discussing major requirements so that you can see how your first semester should be structured. I'll let Dr. White chime in if he has any comments at this point.
As you could tell from sort of the way I moved there, I would like to say one thing. We tend to think about majors and how do I go about getting a major. And I think most of the faculty thinks, at least, and even I as a student thought in terms of learning stuff and sort of parts of the world I want to know, aspects of the world I want to know more about. And particularly in the social sciences, some of the divisions make some sense, but some of the lines among the social sciences are sort of gray. And this is why we have a field called political psychology and a field called political sociology and a field called political economy. They're not all, politics overlaps all of those things. And sociology and anthropology and psychology all sort of overlap each other in various ways. So I guess the way I think about this is you may come thinking, I want to study economics, or I want to study psychology, or I want to study political science. But really, you're coming because if you're interested in things like that, it's because you're interested in how the world works when people deal with other people.
And how people think.
And how people think, which is part of how they deal with other people, right? And because a lot of the ways we think are affected by other people. And so I think that that if you have these kinds of interests, even if you're coming saying, I want to be an economist, or I think I want to study political science, it's worth sort of looking around at the other fields that are called, quote unquote, the social sciences. And so to take the example of anthropology, anthropology, the simple version of anthropology would be sort of walking into a village and seeing how it is that people live together in the village. But I do that when I study Congress. I study the congressional village. People do that when they study federal budgeting or budgeting in England or something. So, anthropology, again, you can bring perspectives from other fields into any of these social science majors. And the other thing is that you can bring these perspectives about how people work together, live together, think together, influence each other, into any of your work life. Meaning, if you're not going to major in a social science, you still will be in situations where the insights of anthropology, or sociology, or psychology will be useful for understanding the world you're in. So anthropology is more structured than some of the other social sciences. They really prefer that you take these three required courses: being human, human evolution, and statistical analysis. And in many cases, 102 being human and 103 human evolution are prerequisites for higher level courses. And a lot of the people in this university study medical anthropology in one form or another, in which case, the intro medical anthropology course is a prereq for those courses. Or if you do more the archaeology thing, this place is famous for its connections to finding new, earlier versions of humanity, of human life, in conjunction with the Museum of Natural History. If you study that kind of stuff, it's worthwhile to pick up the archaeology course early. So in anthropology in particular, it makes sense to pick up the introductory courses early. And I would recommend that as a first thing to do. Beyond that, you're going to be, as you get into anthropology, if you get into it, you're going to be looking at, different types of anthropology, and maybe finding you're excited by, digging up fossils or understanding the medical world from that perspective, or understanding how people manage to live in high altitude, which you would have to travel from Cleveland to do, but we have some really good scholars about it. And so you can see that there's these different concentrations in general anthropology, medical anthropology, archaeology, and physical anthropology. But I don't think you come in necessarily knowing, I want to do that. You discover it. It's a discovery.
Absolutely. I think many of the social sciences are like that. You don't come in knowing that you want to major in any of the social sciences, but in taking some of the introductory courses, you discover how interesting the field is and want to learn more about it.
And another thing people discover, this is a place with a lot of second majors.
Yes.
And people discover, hey, I like that too. And so they take 1 or 2 courses in something. They may double major within the social sciences. They may double major between a social science and a hard science. Well, the social sciences are hard too. All right, natural science. They may double major, say, to history or to English or to a language.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So moving on to sociology, you'll see that sociology is structured in a similar way, in that there's an introductory course in human interaction. There's modern sociological thought, which comes next, and then there's the research methods class, as well as the statistics requirement. Many of the social science majors require a statistics class. And one thing to note is that AP credit for AP statistics, if you get a 5 on the AP exam, it will give you credit for Stat 201, which is acceptable by most of the social sciences as a statistics requirement. In sociology, you can choose between 4 different concentrations, and you can decide that after you take the first couple courses. The concentrations are crime and delinquency, gender, work and family, health and aging, and social inequality. You don't necessarily have to choose a concentration, but they're there in case your interests fall along any of those 4 areas.
Can I say one more thing about sociology there, which is, some people look at a sociology degree as I'm going to go working in a certain kind of, say, social work field or a certain kind of career. And some of the concentrations are particularly relevant to those kinds of career tracks.
Yes, they can be.
Yeah.
And
they're not necessary, but
not necessarily, but some of them are more aligned with the clinical areas of work that students may end up going into, obviously with additional graduate education. Turning now to psychology, I would absolutely recommend that if you're interested in psychology, the first course that you need to take is our Psychology 101 or General Psychology. This course is the prerequisite for most of the upper level classes, and it's an overview course that will give you a taste of all the different areas of the field. And as you can see, in addition, there is a statistics requirement for psychology. There's a group of 3 out of several courses that you must take as part of the required set of courses, and the remaining 15 credits are all elective, and you can take them from a wide variety of psychology courses, including some practicum course where you earn course credit for working over at Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital. We also have independent study courses that more advanced students can get credit for designing a research project that may end up leading to their capstone research project. Again, you can get credit for Psychology 101 with an AP Psychology score of 4 or 5 and go right on into our upper level courses in your first year.
Are you folks the largest major or the second or third largest major in the college?
Well,
You're really large.
In competition with biology
Yeah.
for being one of the largest majors. And actually that brings up an interesting point in that a lot of our psychology majors really are pre-med, on the pre-med track and combine psychology with biology or chemistry. But a lot of our pre-meds major in psychology alone or in several different social sciences. They can major in psychology and sociology, psychology and communication sciences.
Yeah, and one of the nice things about psychology is you'll get a mix. You'll get some pre-meds and you'll get some people who aren't pre-meds, and so there'll be an interesting mix in the classroom.
Absolutely. We have a very diverse group of students in psychology courses. So here's a sample first year schedule for psychology. And this gives you a sense of how you could actually structure your schedule for the first year. And some of the other social sciences map very nicely onto the same sample schedule. So in the first semester, you're going to be shooting to take anywhere between 13 to 16 credits. You'll be taking your first seminar, which will be added to your schedule after you register. And you've probably learned this in previous webinars this summer. So you don't need to worry about actually signing up for a first seminar. Then, as I said before, you'd want to try to take General Psychology, Psychology 101, and we have 3 different sections of this course, and they all are in large classrooms, so you shouldn't have any trouble getting into that course. And 2 to 3 additional courses of your choice, so you have a lot of freedom in that first semester to explore other social sciences like political science, or to go ahead and start taking some of your other general education requirements in the natural sciences or humanities. And then of course you want to put in your physical education course or a varsity sport. In the spring, you're going to go into your university seminars, perhaps a statistics course, upper level psychology courses of your choice, and again, physical education. This just gives you an idea of how your first year might look if you are interested in majoring in psychology. And it's not etched in stone. As you can see, there's a lot of flexibility. Moving on to communication sciences and disorders, and you'll notice that psychology and communication sciences are housed in the same department, the Department of Psychological Sciences. So there are some psychology courses that actually contribute to the communication sciences and disorders major. Now this particular major is a little bit unique because many of the majors have already decided that they want to go on and become a licensed speech language therapist, pathologist, or even an audiologist. And so the unique aspect of wanting to go on in those areas is that the accrediting body for those licenses, the programs where you can get licensure from, want to see specific courses at the undergraduate level. So our major is designed to make sure that graduates with that major have all the prerequisites that they're going to need to be accepted into an accredited graduate program where they can become a licensed speech-language pathologist. So the first semester you want to try to get into communication disorders, which is COSI 109, and also the psychology, general psychology course, a statistics course, and then another communication sciences course from that list of selected courses. Again, your AP courses may also allow you to get a jump start on your major. After that, there are a series of communication science courses that would need to be taken in order to prepare you for going on to graduate school. And then another related major is cognitive science. And perhaps one of the most common questions that I get from students who are interested in psychology and cognitive science is, what's the difference between the two?
So what is the difference between the two?
and that actually is a very good question, because they have many similarities. But here at Case Western Reserve University, our cognitive science department is unique in that it really has a interdisciplinary emphasis to it. The cognitive science department here studies higher order cognition from the perspective of a combination of neuroscience, linguistics, psychology, philosophy, biology, anthropology, all of those things combined, evolutionary perspectives. It's a very broad sort of way of looking at aspects of the human mind and human thought.
I think one thing I would point out about CogSci is all social sciences are works in progress, right? In fact, anything academic or almost anything in life should be a work in progress. But cognitive science as a way of thinking about the world is relatively new.
Yes.
And it's relatively ambitious. And so they're looking for things like, how do you explain human creativity? How do you explain, are there ways in which people are sort of hardwired to behave in certain ways at certain times? And there's a lot of cutting-edge work going on here, and there's a lot of exploration and attempts going on here. And so, for instance, one of the major figures in the Cog-Sci department started out as an English professor. So it's a work in progress. It's exciting. You might try it out, see what it looks like. It's harder to specify what it is,
yes,
because it's a work in progress.
Well, but I think when students start taking some of the cognitive science courses, they realize all of the different ways that you can study the way that the mind works.
Yeah.
And so in cognitive science, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of the schedule for the first year, and you can combine across several of the introductory courses. There's no set order. The recommended order or groupings would be to take Cognitive Science 101 and 201 in the fall, or 101 and 206 in the fall, depending upon where your interests are. The 206 course would have a stronger interest in linguistics, and then Cognitive Science 102 and 202 in the spring. As you can see, taking statistics is also going to be required for the cognitive science major, and there's several psychology courses that can also be used as electives for cognitive science. We have many students who double major in psychology and cognitive science because they really combine very nicely. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. White, to talk about political science.
Me? Oh, okay. Well, political science is one of the most flexible majors. Basically, we have 3 required courses. It's sort of nice if you take the required courses, which are sort of general survey courses of chunks of the discipline: American politics, comparative politics, and international relations. It's sort of nice if you take them first, because hopefully we're teaching something there that was useful when you take, say, a course that builds on it, like maybe if you study Congress in the Congress course, it'd be good to have a broad overview of American politics first. Maybe if you study the Middle East, it'd be nice to have a broad overview of comparative politics first. But political systems vary so much, and even a little thing like Congress is so unique, I mean, little compared to, say, the world, that you can study Congress without having taken an American government course. It's just a little harder. And so we have the 3 required courses. We do give credit for your 109 American politics and 160 comparative politics. There's a typo there. Oops, I'm sorry, my fault. We give and so you get AP credit for those classes. Although we, of course, as professors, think that you're better off if you took our version of it. But there's no prerequisites for any other classes. We do require a senior project, which I think is a really good idea because it makes you sort of integrate your thinking. But it's really no different from the concept of a Sage's capstone. We were just doing it decades before the Sage's capstone was invented. So my recommendations, if you show up here and you're interested in politics, either as a potential major or just because it's such a large part of our lives, is first take courses that interest you. Secondly, yeah, it is. Earlier is better for the intro courses. This particular fall, there are, most courses would work, but some seem to me personally, particularly interesting potentially for arriving students. One is a new course called Participation and Power, which is in a way sort of an introduction to politics course, but isn't called that. It's sort of broad themes of politics, working back over 3,000 years of history, actually. The course on political parties is a way of looking at American government. Course on political thought in China. A special course we're doing just this time, well, on the financial crisis. We actually did it in 2009 and thought it was just this time. And it's 4 years later and there's still a financial crisis, so we're doing it again. Middle East, obviously always a hot topic. And 388, politics, policy, and the global environment. So all of those involve things that are sort of part of your life you're probably thinking about, you're probably running across them in the newspaper, and it might be fun to take a course in them.
Can I stop you just for a second? What do you find in political for your political science majors as the most common other major that they might have if they have more than one?
I've never counted, but it's either history, English, or economics. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure which it is. But all three of them are fairly common. History and English, often for people who think they want to go to law school. Mm-hmm. Economics, because let's face it, you understand politics a lot better if you understand economics. And you understand economics a lot better if you understand politics.
Thank you. I was wondering.
And that brings us to economics, which is, I happen to really like our economics department personally, and they're really just an interesting bunch of scholars. Economics is a little more structured, because really it's a lot harder to do intermediate macroeconomics if you haven't done introductory macroeconomics. Right there, it really does build it on itself mathematically. So the required courses are introductory microeconomics, introductory macroeconomics, intermediate macroeconomics, and intermediate micro and microeconomics. Now, and a statistics class. Now, they've decided they want to do their own statistics class, and it's actually in the operations research department.
That's right.
But a requirement for their statistics class is calculus. So if you don't come in with calculus, then for all practical purposes, Calculus 1, Math 125 is a requirement for the economics major. Eventually you're going to want to do econometrics. There's sort of more classes in the econ major than in some of the others. So you show up. It's a really good idea to take 102 or 103 or both. The introductory classes. If you have AP credit, you might just go ahead and take the intermediate, that places you out of the intro, micro, macro. You might want to place out. You might want to go immediately into intermediate, micro, macro, so you can get into the really fun stuff like urban economics and energy and all that kind of stuff. Health economics. And you want to get rid of the empirical sequence early. I mean, you may not want to do it your first semester, really. I mean, it depends on how you are with math and what else you're carrying. But since you need calculus, statistics, and econometrics, it's probably a good idea to get that all done by the end of the second year if you're an econ major. Don't have to. I mean, the people who decide to be econ majors when they're, their second year or whatever, or third year. But it's better if you're doing it to get the mathematical sequence, the mathematical architecture out of the way first.
And I should also just remind everybody, I'm sure that in previous webinars you've heard about the general education requirements, which are both SAGEs and a breadth requirement depending upon your major. But for those that are majoring in the social sciences, you would be able to use, say for example, Math 125, both towards the economics major, but also towards your general education breadth requirement in the natural sciences and mathematics.
Well, this is one thing where we don't exactly know what other people have told you, but you basically have about a year of required of general education requirements. There's the 3 SAGES courses and essentially 6, maybe 7 breadth requirements.
That's right.
And the other things may look like they're extra, but from a political science department's perspective, you're going to do a senior project anyway. So SAGES capstone isn't an extra course. We were going to ask you to do one anyway. Similarly, departmental seminars. Well, any department, you're going to want to do a seminar if you possibly can at some point.
Right.
That's a good thing. So I think that you want to, these sample first year schedules, of course, are built thinking about the general education requirements as well as the major. And you're seeing one here for economics. I think I would, but I want to emphasize that on the one hand, you want to get the general, you don't want to be like me. You don't want to be the person who in college found himself taking a summer double physical chemistry because he wanted to graduate and he was running late and he didn't want to do science, so he hadn't done it early. You don't want to do that. But you do have time. So you want to mix in the general education with stuff that you think would just be fun out of curiosity,
And
to the extent you can.
They can actually do
They
both.
can be the same thing.
Yes.
Right. I mean, you might. You have a humanities requirement, and you find a humanities course that sounds like fun. So this is just an example, and again, this will be on the website. The opposite of economics, really, in terms of flexibility among the social sciences, is international studies, which is an interdisciplinary major. And the basic concept of international studies is lots of people are interested in the world, and they'd like to think that there's a field of studying the world, but there really isn't a field of studying the world. It gets you back to what I was saying about the social sciences in general. There's a whole bunch of perspectives that you'd want to bring into that. And then there's areas, and if you wanted to study, Africa, there's all sorts of aspects of Africa you could study. So international studies is set up to be as flexible as possible. You work with the major advisor, who right now is the director, right now Professor McMahon, to put it together. But it starts out with, we want you to look at the international context from 4 different perspectives. The anthropological perspective, so with the intro anthropology course, the economic perspective, there's an intro microeconomics, because again, economics works differently in different places, and yet there's some basic core to it. Modern world history, and the political science international relations class. The other thing that the international studies major says is, well, if you're going to be international, you might go someplace they don't speak English. And so it's probably a good idea if you have some language competency. And so it wants you to have language competency at the 300 level or above, which means if you don't, you'll be taking classes in that direction. And beyond that, again, you're just sort of, understanding the world is going to take you forever, right? So you're going to spend your life doing that, but so it's sort of practice in understanding the world. So you do an area focus, say 2 courses on Africa, or 2 courses on China, or 2 courses on Europe, or whatever. You do a topical focus on some aspect, maybe international trade, maybe international conflict. You do 2 other courses out of the 100 or 200 or whatever that qualify as international studies. And then there's a senior colloquium. So for, if you show up, if you're interested, or if you want to play around with it, the best thing is to take one of those introductory courses from the from the mainline social sciences, and consider language if you have not tested out. If you show up, you know French, some French, you didn't test out of French, well, you're going to know more French now than in a year if you go this year without taking French. So maybe take the French now and start working for it.
Or think about exploring a new language.
Or if the reason you didn't test out of French is that you didn't like French, think about something else, right? About Arabic or Spanish or Chinese or whatever.
Yeah. I'm going to interrupt for a second because can you talk a little bit about opportunities for studying abroad that fit into international studies or into any of our majors?
Yeah, I would say it's not really particularly international studies. I mean, obviously the people who do international studies may be particularly interested in that. But so will political science students, so will anthropology students going off to Uganda or wherever. And so obviously people who major in a foreign language are going to want to do it. People who major in economics will want to do it, and a lot of engineers are going to want to do it. We have a nice version of Engineers Without Borders, as a student activity group. It's within the context of any of the social science majors. I think it's pretty easy to structure your schedule because, again, remember, general education is roughly 10 courses. A major is roughly 10 courses, maybe 11, 12, 13 if you're talking economics with, once you figure you got to take the math, although that counts towards general education requirements too. So you've got flexibility to study abroad. It's not really a problem. There are a couple of more structured programs. I mean, I think it's harder for the engineers, although you can do it because of the just things being so structured. But I don't think any of the social sciences majors makes it a real problem.
It actually works very well and very easily, especially in psychology and sociology, anthropology. We really encourage students to think about taking this opportunity to spend some time studying abroad, whether it's a short-term study abroad or a full semester or longer. And there's some great opportunities that you'll learn about.
And it's even easier in political science and a couple of the other international studies, because a bunch of the courses you're going to take studying abroad will count towards the major. So it's really easy there. International studies is particularly likely to be a second major, although it's also good for the people who don't want to confine themselves to a mainline major and want to take a lot of stuff that they're really interested in, and somewhere in there they get international studies so they can say that's their major. Oh, is that it? Have we done all of them?
Yeah, we've done all the social sciences.
Oh, well. Okay, so now what do we do?
Well, hopefully we answer some questions.
Yeah, now we're going to turn it over to some questions from our viewers this evening, and we've had some come in, so we'll just get right into them. So first question from tonight comes from Jill. She says, if I want to major in biology but minor in something like anthropology, how would I pick my classes? How would I fit the right classes to fulfill the requirements for both fields?
Well, that's actually very doable. The first thing you'd want to do, because the biology major is a little bit more structured, you would want to try to tailor your first semester schedule to the biology major requirements for that first semester. And then try to, if you want to go ahead and start an anthropology course right away, you could try to fit in the first anthropology course, one of the introductory level courses, but you wouldn't necessarily have to rush. You could certainly wait and start fitting your anthropology courses in later semesters. You have plenty of time. Typical minors are 15 credits.
5 courses, 8 semesters. I mean, it should be plausible. Now, of course, at some point you're going to have to be, if you're a bio major, let's say you weren't thinking of a minor, you'd have to be picking up 2 social sciences courses for your breadth requirement. So you might as well pick up, if you think you're interested in anthropology, take an anthropology course as part of your breadth requirement and see if you really do like anthropology, and then maybe continue to minor, or maybe even double major. It's a fairly common double major.
It is a fairly common double major.
Particularly for people who are interested in public health kinds of things as careers.
Okay, thank you. Karthik writes in, he says, how will my course selection differ if I want a minor in one of these areas rather than a major? And I think you touched on some of that, but I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Yes, well, different areas have more or less structure for their minors. So for example, psychology is very flexible. You take Psychology 101 plus 4 other courses of your choice. Communication sciences is a little bit more structured, but again, if you start off your minor requirements by taking the most basic introductory level course to begin with, just to make sure that you are interested in the field, then you can pick up the rest of the courses as you go.
Yeah, I think particularly if you're going to start out with sort of introductory classes anyway, it doesn't much matter whether you're thinking major or minor, really. And the other thing to remember is if you don't want to start out with an introductory class in something because it's something that just seems really exciting, you know, maybe global environmental politics, again, it's just one class out of 40. You've got time. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think that, and I don't think there's any of these majors where you have to start out by taking 2.
No.
So take what looks good as an introduction.
Great, thank you. Amanda writes in and says, as a psychology major, how does one get on the pre-med track?
Well, the pre-med curriculum starts pretty much your first semester. There's courses that everybody takes that intend to go to medical school, and then you would just go ahead and pick up your psychology courses in addition. So first semester would probably include math and biology and chemistry, possibly a lab. And you can also fit in your Introduction to Psychology, General Psychology course.
I think that, so the basic set of the things people think of as pre-med requirements, which is the boxes that the medical schools are going to want to see you did, about what? 35 credits, 40 credits?
Probably.
Yeah, so one of the things that you want to watch for is how much you want to take on your first semester. But I think it's pretty standard to do what Professor Thompson is talking about and take Psych 101. That's the number?
Yes.
Yeah, the first semester. If you're on that pre-med
Right.
psychology track, I think that the undergraduate studies may be sort of discouraging it a bit because they're worried about people taking on too much.
Well,
and so
remember, your first semester is going to be an adjustment.
Yeah.
You know, you're living in a new place, and taking college courses is different than taking high school classes. So you don't need to worry if you can't fit that psychology course in that first semester. It's absolutely fine. You can wait. You can take it in the spring. You're not going to be behind. The pre-med curriculum is a little bit more regimented, so you want to go ahead and make sure that you take the first courses that you need for that curriculum.
So, for example, let's say you were coming in, you were taking a SAGE's first seminar, which is 4 credits, a bio class with a lab, which is 4 credits, right? Yeah. Yeah. A math.
Right, which is 4.
Okay, and if you're taking chemistry, you may not want to take that the psychology
Right.
as well.
You can certainly wait.
You can certainly wait. And Psych 101 is going to, it's not like some other class. That's always offered. There are always people who want to take that class.
There's always room in that
It's
class.
like Econ 102 or something. It's or again, the intro classes tend to be offered every semester.
Thank you. Paul writes in and says, is it possible to take a major in economics and minors in both computer science and statistics? And maybe this is a good time just to talk about how students combine majors and minors.
Can't see why it would be a problem. First of all, the economics department would love it because they want you to be very numerate, and the unless there's a problem. I mean, statistics again just builds on from the original statistics classes. I don't see why there'd be a problem. Unless computer sciences requires a whole bunch of other engineering classes, which I don't think it does. You should be able to do that with no problem.
I agree.
And it should be fun if you're into that kind of stuff.
All right, thank you both. And Sarah writes in and wants to know, are there ways to explore the different social science fields without necessarily taking courses?
Yeah, well, there's lots of opportunities that, for example, because I know psychological science is the best, I can think of students who are not psychology majors or communication disorders majors who get involved in our research that's going on. Students volunteer sometimes they get paid positions, so you can actually see firsthand exactly what goes into doing a psychological research study or communication disorders research study. In fact, we have quite a few students who are majoring in engineering that work in our research laboratories in the social sciences.
Students could be objects of your studies also, right?
Well, they could certainly be participants in the studies, yes. If they want to experience research from that side, that's always a possibility as well.
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer for me because on the one hand, in terms of politics, I mean, look, you're experiencing it all the time. Just pick up the newspaper or go online or look at the TV or whatever. We like to think that when we teach about it, we give you tools to think about it more systematically and more deeply. And there'll be lots of lectures on campus. There'll be things you can go to that give some examples of that. There'll be late night bull sessions in the dorm, right? But I think you get more of a sense of the field from actually taking a course. But you don't have to, again, you don't have to major in something in order to dip your toes into it and see if you like it and find something. Again, there are lots of people interested in the environment or energy who might want to take global environmental politics, or interested in health who might want to take health politics, or who have interest in the Middle East who might take Middle East politics. So I do think that to get a sense of the field, it's better to take classes, but there are things related to the concern, to say public policy and politics concern going on campus.
Yeah, and also remember that your SAGES courses are taught by faculty from all different departments, and you choose this, the university seminars that you want to take, and you can take those from faculty who work in some of the social science fields that you're interested in, even if you don't want to commit to being a major or a minor in
and
those
the
areas.
first seminar, you provide a list of classes you prefer, right? So
right.
So you're trying to direct that in a general. In a direction. So that's another way you can sort of try things out.
Okay, thanks. And Jeff would like to know if I won't be able to complete a minor in one of these areas because my major, well, I probably just ask it in a different way. So the student wants to know if he's not going to be able to complete a minor in a subject area. Is it still beneficial just to take courses in a variety of different departments?
I would say absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. That's what you're in college for. You're in college to learn about the world and look at some things more deeply that once you're working, you may not, once you're working full time at a paid job, you may not have the opportunity to look at. I'm not, being in college is a lot of work. And you're supposed to be coming up with credits doing something. And in most majors, there's a point at which if you take more courses in that major, they don't count towards graduating. Like in political science, if you take 14 courses beyond the 100 level, that doesn't help you graduate at all. So if somebody came in thinking he was going to be a political science major, and they were saying, I only want to do other things that are majors and minors, you're just limiting yourself too much, and you've got to take something else. So yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons I started out by talking about the social sciences and there'd be sort of different ways of looking at related things is you might discover that the way sociologists think is really exciting, and you didn't know that. But you don't have to be a sociology major to benefit from taking a few sociology of crime and delinquency classes or whatever. So absolutely, you should never think that something has to add up to a line on your transcript in order to be worth taking. I think the faculty tends to think there's too many double majors and triple majors and people having minors because they feel they have to have lines on transcripts to explain what they're doing. And my personal judgment is what graduate schools care about and what people who want to hire you care about is, did you do well? And if you did well, that's going to be strongly related to, did you take classes that interested you and that you wanted to work on? And trying to shoehorn that into a bunch of majors and minors rather than, hey, that sounds interesting, I want to learn about that, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That sounds interesting, I want to learn about that. You're likely to do a good job on it, and that's what matters.
Well, I strongly encourage you to take courses that you're going to enjoy. And the other thing that's happening more and more is an emphasis on being able to tackle a problem from multiple perspectives. And by taking courses in other areas, you're looking at the same questions from different angles. And that's going to allow you to be able to think outside the box of whatever field you do end up going into. So I highly encourage it.
Great, thanks. And we have a student who would like to know what kind of research opportunities are available in the various social science departments, and how would a student go about pursuing these opportunities?
Oh, it varies tremendously. There's more research opportunities available in the departments that are more closely related to the medical industrial complex, and so more likely to get funding from that type. Mm-hmm. In a department like political science, it's much more a matter of some faculty member has a little money from a grant and finds a student and says, hey, would you like to work on this? And that does happen. I mean, there's a few people every year who are working with us on our research that way, but we don't tend to have the same kind of money, of grant funding. And the other thing that will happen in my department is there's the summer internship support program, although that's not really research with faculty members. But that's, experiential learning. And there are lots of opportunities for internships around town, but again, that's sort of unpaid stuff. Things like interning with the government relations office of the hospital or the university. But in something like psychology, I think it's a very different story.
Well, we involve a lot of undergraduates in our research. But you also have to remember that the social science departments are part of the entire university, which includes the professional schools as well. And so our students find research opportunities beyond the research labs of just the faculty that are in our departments in the College of Arts and Sciences. And in addition, there's also an office for undergraduate research, and they also connect undergraduates directly to research opportunities. And students are also encouraged to apply for different programs that are hosted across the university where they can find summer opportunities to do research as well. But what I encourage students to do is to talk to as many faculty as possible about what they do. And when they find a faculty member that does work that they're really interested in getting involved in, they just should ask them. If they want to be more systematic about it, you can look at faculty websites and look at where their expertise is and what papers they've published, and then reach out to that faculty member individually and say, I really am fascinated by your work. I would love to participate and volunteer.
So how do you find the students who work with you? Well, how do they find you?
Well, a lot of times they take my first seminar and they begin as freshmen working for me. I usually have several every year that do that way. Other times they wander into my office, or they send me an email, or sometimes they come to a talk that I'm giving and they talk to me afterwards and they say, I'd like to get involved. And depending upon whether I have space in my lab at that point, I invite them.
And there, of course, is the distinction between working with faculty on the faculty's projects and doing your own research through the source program or whatever. I certainly notice that when we have our various events where we have students are doing posters, there are a lot of psychology students there doing their work.
Well, another way that you can get involved in research, especially if you have an idea of your own that you would like to study, is to do it for course credit. You can do an independent study course, and in psychology that could range from 1 to 3 credits. I think most of the other majors are the same way. And you have a faculty member advisor, but it's your work, it's your study. And you can do that multiple times. You can take the independent study course across several different semesters and put it together and end with a very nice senior capstone project. And that's a very popular way to get involved in research.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. A student would like to know, if I take a class that's counting towards my psychology major, is it possible to have that course count towards another major or minor?
Yes, it does work that way. It depends on the other major or minor. Probably not a minor so much, but another major. So for example, there are several psychology courses that count towards your psychology major, and you could also have them count towards the communication science major or cognitive science. And actually, I take that back, there is the childhood studies minor, and there are some psychology courses that are part of that minor as well. There is a limit as to how many you can count, and each major or minor will specifically state what that is.
Sort of by definition, all of the interdisciplinary majors and minors, whether we're talking international studies or Asian studies or policies, public policy studies or childhood, all of those, by definition, they're counting stuff from regular majors because that's what they've got, largely, with a few exceptions. There aren't special courses for them. So that's straightforward. Then the question is, are there courses that cross-list between two majors? And there'll be courses that cross-list in psychology with cog-sci or with communication sciences. There'll be courses, there's not a lot of them, but there are courses that cross-list between history and political science. There are courses that cross-list between between philosophy and political science. So there are specific courses that cross-list major to major or department to department. And if they cross-list for the major, they cross-list for the minor. And then again, anything that's interdisciplinary, by definition, stuff from disciplines cross-list to it. If it, so yes, there will be situations, but but again, there are rules as to how many courses you can double count. But there's always courses that can double count.
All right, we have a student with two questions about study abroad. One is, does study abroad coursework count towards my major requirements? And when is a good time to start talking to my advisor about study abroad?
Well, does it count to your major requirements? It depends on what the course is. I mean, if somebody is studying abroad in their political science major, and they're taking a course in German, no, it counts to German. It counts as a German course. If they're taking a course in German on the development of the German state, and or German social policy in the last, since reunification, maybe it would count to political science. But it depends entirely on what the course is. And the process is when you plan your study abroad, you come up with a preliminary list of the courses you would do, and then you go to the department chairs. To the individual department chairs who tell you, well, this is what I would count it as, or if it's a course we don't have, I would count it as a indeterminate course in my major. And usually it's pretty straightforward. Every once in a while you get one where it's not clear what it counts as, but basically before you go, normally, you try to figure out into which departments each of the courses you would study abroad counts. And so yes. If it's a course that we consider equivalent to a course in our major, then it counts towards our major requirements. Right. But a whole lot of the people who come into my office and say, can I count this as a political science class, aren't political science majors. They're just taking the opportunity to learn something about British politics while they were in London or whatever.
Right, and I do approve psychology courses that are taken at institutions that students are studying abroad at. My piece of advice to psychology majors when they're studying abroad is to try to take advantage of the unique courses that are being offered at their host institution that we do not offer, because it really allows them to broaden their horizons, and they'll transfer in as elective credit, which will count towards the major. Unless they really definitely need a specific required course in order to graduate on time, I urge them to really take advantage of what their host institution has.
So if we have a student, say a political science student who goes to London, and if there's a course on the Northern Ireland conflict. I mean, we're not going to offer a course on the Northern Ireland conflict, but what a fun course! What a good thing to learn about.
Exactly.
And so yeah, we certainly try to encourage that. As to when you should start thinking about it, it depends on your major. If it's a really flexible major like political science, well, you know, start of your sophomore year before you sign up for sophomore year. If you're planning on going abroad during your junior year, talk to your advisor. Make sure just to be sure you have a sense of how it's going to fit in. Particularly because in a lot of cases people have two majors and they're really trying to fit something with two majors. So talk to one of your advisors at least. Obviously, if it's engineering, I'd say you start first semester of freshman year, trying to think it through.
To bring it up whenever.
Oh, absolutely.
Whenever you have questions about it, it's never too early to start talking about it.
But that doesn't mean you have to make decisions. I mean, you're not going to know, where you're going to go and what'll seem most interesting, and whether you're going fall or spring or whatever, immediately. So.
Okay, we have a student who writes in and says, I would like to get into nonprofit work or urban development after I graduate. I know there's not a major for this at Case Western Reserve University, but how would I go about getting advice to take coursework that would help prepare me for this in the future?
That's an interesting one. One option would be to create a dean's special major.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, which we're doing right now with one of my students who I'm advising, who's doing a sort of bioethics public health dean's special major. In terms of nonprofits, it's interesting because a lot of the things that you want to know for nonprofits aren't really undergraduate courses. The things like the legal aspects of nonprofits and when you can lobby and when you can't. We have a graduate program for nonprofits. You can probably get approval for taking some of the graduate. You need special approval, but can presumably do it. There's history of nonprofits courses. There's economics courses that would be relevant.
I think some sociology courses would definitely be relevant.
I think urban development is very much something you would put together from courses in different departments. Mostly sociology and history, but there's economics, there might be some political science. There's going to be one next spring. I know that. That would be very, very relevant to urban development. But you just have to, again, you sort of sit down and look at the course catalog and say, does this look interesting? Does this look interesting? You'd probably want to find a faculty member who could help you with it. With that particular interest, I would. But there are other people who work particularly in cities who probably would too. It depends a lot on what your interest in urban development is. Is it more the economic side of urban development? Is it more the social inequality side of urban development, which shows up in sociology? Is it holistic, so you want to take some urban economics and you want to take some social inequality classes?
Right.
I think it can be done.
Yeah, it could definitely be done, and it would probably be a lot of fun to do to create your a dean's major like that. But if you don't want to do that, you can choose one of our existing social science majors, political science or sociology. You only need to have one major to graduate, and then you can pick up the rest of the courses that will give you the background that you want just by using the room in your schedule, the electives that you can take.
Yeah, and you explain if you're applying to a graduate program in urban development or whatever, you say, well, I picked up this background which was useful in my majors, but then I'm really interested in urban development, so I did the following things, and I interned at the following places, which there will be a lot of opportunities in Cleveland to intern at places where you can learn about urban development, or attempts at urban development at least, and just you can tell a pretty compelling story about what you did with your college education.
Okay, well, we are just about out of time. Well, with the couple minutes that we have left, I thought I would just ask our host for the evening, give any final thoughts they have for students who are interested in exploring these fields as they head into their first semester.
Well, you said the key word, which is exploring. This is We're in the United States. We're not in France. I did my sabbatical in France, and my daughter was horrified because she learned in the equivalent of 8th grade, in quatrième, that you were going to take a test in 11th grade which was going to determine your life. Right? And you had to decide which of a couple of tracks you were going on, and that was going to determine your life. And if you wanted to change your mind, too bad. And the American educational system doesn't really work like that. There's some things, if you're committed to them, great. And it helps to be committed to them early because you really have to build a lot of stuff like engineering and accounting. But for other stuff, you've got a chance to explore and to find out what excites you and what interests you. And you might know, great. If you know, we really hope that what we have in our classrooms and what we have as extracurricular experiences just makes you really happy with what you knew you were interested in. But if you don't know, that's why you're here, to try stuff out and find out. And obviously we like majors. It makes us look good to the provost, and all that. But what we most want is students to realize that in the whole package of social sciences here, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, a lot of interesting researchers, a lot of lively minds.
And don't stress out about creating your schedule.
Yes.
There's going to be lots of time to drop an ad, to get additional advice in August from your advisor, and just really be ready to explore and figure out what you enjoy.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Professor Thompson and Professor White, for your time this evening and your very valuable insight. Thanks to everyone who tuned in this evening. And just to remind you that if you're interested, we have a couple of the programs this week. Tomorrow night will be the biological sciences, and Thursday we'll finish up with the mathematical and natural sciences. And of course, you can view our archives anytime on the New Students webpage. So have a great evening.